The biggest moments in sports are streaming live on Fox One. From MLB to NFL, Big Noon Saturdays, and so much more. Fox One brings you the games, rivalries, and can't-miss moments all season long. And it doesn't stop at the final whistle. Catch highlights, expert analysis, interviews, and the stories behind the biggest moments in sports. Watch live or on demand, at home or on the go. Stream Fox Sports on Fox One. Download the app today.
Hello?
Look what TJ Maxx dragged in.
The Devil Wears Prada 2 is now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
We are digital, we are downloadable, we are streamable.
The fashion event of the year is certified fresh.
Pull yourself together, we have work to do.
Critics say it's smart and witty and the perfect sequel.
That's all.
Get runway ready for The Devil Wears Prada 2 on Disney Plus and Hulu. Rated PG-13.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Hello there, Stanley Carr here. You know, I love collecting music and sports memorabilia. Want to know where you can find some? I'll tell you. Go to oldglory.com. This website features one-of-a-kind apparel from your favorite sports teams and musical artists. And I can help you get 15% off of all items. Use the code WWH135. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. Before I introduce my guest today, I want to take this time to promote our brand new book, which you can see right here on the screen. Champions for a Cause Volume 1 is a collection of interviews with some of your favorite professional wrestling stars. I am talking about Mark Mero, Tito Santana, Buff Bagwell, Jake the Snake Roberts, so many others. You can buy your copy now on Amazon.com for $15. It is available in paperback. With me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a member of the legendary Malenko family. I am talking with the one and only Joe Malenko. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank God I'm one and only.
Well, what can you tell me about your first exposure to wrestling? Any stories you want to share about your first memories of the business?
My first real memories of the business when I was old enough to kind of start putting words to things. I was in Madison Square Garden. I was probably 5, 6 years old. It was the old Madison Square Garden. My dad was working it. Wahoo McDaniels was there at the time, or maybe he came in a little bit later. But it was Bruno Sammartino, it was Bobo Brazil, it was all the old guard up in New York, and that was my memory. Sitting there in the dressing room, looking at all these guys who were, 9 feet tall to me, all just the typical bigger than life kind of guys, and guys who, frankly, built this business.
When I've talked to people on the show before that come from wrestling families, a lot of times we'll talk about going to dinner or having the wrestlers come over to their house. Do you have any stories you want to share about any run-ins with some of these guys from back in the day that you recall?
I mean, we always met up with the rest of the boys. My dad really kind of just ran in that circle. Part of the reason was, especially back then when the business was more protected, when the infamous kayfabe was in place and living well and breathing, the guys hung amongst themselves because, frankly, that made the most sense. So, especially the baby faces and the heels could get together, but they had to do it, off to the side. And so we had a lot of guys that would either come over the house or we'd meet up somewhere. like when we were in St. Joe, Missouri, there was a lake, and it was called Craddock Lake, after a guy, Bob Craddock. I don't remember who the heck he was, even maybe a promoter or something. But we would be there. Larry Hamilton, one of the assassins, Larry and Jody Hamilton. Larry Hamilton would come. I mean, guys, anybody in the territory would come to the lake. We'd have a picnic. We'd swim. I was a little kid, had the greatest of times. Over at our house, we had everybody come over. When we were in New Jersey, when we lived in New Jersey, in Irvington, New Jersey, we lived at a small little place. We had the Kentuckians, and we had the midgets, and we had everybody and anybody coming over for lunch or backyard kind of deals, and of course we'd be on the road. And when you're on the road, you go to eat with people. You find a place where you can hunker down. If it's a mix of babies and heels, if it's just the heels or the baby faces, you don't have to worry as much. And so, I mean, no one thing sits out. I sat with a lot of guys. I mean, I was just talking, somebody mentioned Freddie Blassie the other day. I remember there's a place here in town called Village Inn. It was owned and started by a guy by the name of Dow Sherwood. And we would go to Village Inn when I was a kid. So I remember sitting there with my dad and classy Freddie Blassie, who was pretty classy.
One of the classic old-time heels, one of the greatest of all time, could get under somebody's skin. What was Dean like to be around growing up?
A little pain in the ass. When he was little, he was just an annoyance. That's typical, right? He wanted to hang with my friends. He wanted to be around me. But then we grew close. We especially when we got on the road together. In Japan, we spent a lot of time together. But when he was a little kid, he was just a pain in my rear end.
Did you know at such a young age that you wanted to become a wrestler?
Well, I never really did. I sort of just became a wrestler by default. I mean, look, legitimate wrestling. I loved wrestling. So from the time I was 7 years old, I started wrestling. But as far as pro wrestling goes, I just kind of fell into it. It wasn't anything that I set my sights on. It just happened. And it just kind of happened by default because of who my dad was and the family business that he was in, because it was a family business. When your dad wrestles, you're all in wrestling. There is no escape from it. You're on the road. Back in the territory days, you're on the road together. You're traveling together. You're going to venues together because you just do. So you're part of the wrestling scene, whether or not you want to be a wrestler or you don't. Because if you don't want to be part of the wrestling scene, then they have to find somebody to put you out to adoption with.
It's in the blood.
Yeah. But it's more than that. It's not, again, back to the pro stuff. The pro stuff was, I guess, kind of in my blood, but it wasn't so much seated in my blood that I had to be a professional wrestler, that I focused in on it. Now, my brother was a different story. My brother wanted to be in the business, and he kind of held out from doing other things so that he could be in the wrestling business. He didn't get his break until he was, early 30s. And then finally it clicked. Really, when he started, coming to his own, my dad had already passed, which is always a shame, when stuff like that happens.
Well, you got into the business. Growing up, you mentioned you amateur wrestled. Do you feel that helped prepare you for what you encounter later on when becoming a professional wrestler? Because it's physicality, it's a combat sport. You're working with your body. Do you feel like there were things during that time growing up that helped kind of get you ready to go?
Of course. I mean, first of all, the training for amateur and the need to have amazing endurance when you're on a mat with somebody to be able to keep going, that translates on over pretty well because you have to have that endurance when you're in a ring. Yeah. Guys like Stan Hansen, for example. I mean, here's this big burly guy, but he would leave the dressing room and he wouldn't stop for an hour. That kind of endurance doesn't just happen by default. You work at it. I worked at it in amateur wrestling and then preparing myself to do submission or shoot style, legitimate catch wrestling. And does that translate into the business? It does, as far as endurance goes and your ability to, to go and not have to be sucking wind. But it doesn't always translate into a great worker. And by no means am I saying I'm a great worker. I had some good matches, and I had a great time in the business. The the ability to work in the ring isn't contingent upon whether or not you wrestled amateur. It can go one of a couple ways. I mean, you can be a great amateur wrestler and not be able to translate stuff into the ring when you're a pro and really do what you need to do to, to get the crowd on the edge of their seats. Or you can be somebody who never wrestled before at all and be a great worker. It isn't necessary. Hey, I used to wrestle and now I get into the business and I'm a star.
You're doing all these different seminars and training sessions. What, in your opinion, makes such a great worker?
There's a lot of things. I mean, there's no one thing in particular. A lot of what I talk about is being solid, not stiff, but solid. You want things to be solid, even if it's the appearance of being solid. I want to make sure that if I do something, it accomplishes three things in a ring. One is that I deliver something in a way in which is believable and the audience buys into it. They're engaged. They have a great time and the seats get filled up. And then I want those same people coming back the next week and the week after that and the week after that, because it's not a one and done, right? You in the business, especially in the territory days, you ran programs and you wanted those programs to last as long as they could, because that avoided the need to bring a bunch of people coming in and out of there in a revolving door sort of thing. So I want to do three things in the ring. I just talked about this in my seminar. I want guys to perform at a level where they've engaged an audience. They got the audience sitting there in the palm of their hand, ready to do whatever they tell that audience to do. Here, I'm going to bring you up a little bit. I'm going to bring you down a little bit. And then I'm going to get you to pop, and you're going to explode, and and you're going to want to come back the next week. The second thing I want to do, and not in necessarily any particular order, depending on any given day, I'm in there with my opponent, but I always say it's not my opponent, it's my partner. I have a partner in that ring. And like any partner, I want to do something in a way in which I protect that partner. I don't want to do things that I don't feel comfortable doing. I want to do things in a way in which I protect that guy I'm in there with. And I want to do that for a number of reasons. And one of the main reasons is because that guy has a right to make a living, and he has the right to go home to his family each and every night. And he has the right to longevity in this business, not just, going for a year, but going for, maybe 10, 20 years. Or if he spins off into the movie business and becomes a movie star, that's a different thing. But if he wants to use the business to make a living and to tuck away enough to retire at some point in time, you're only going to do that if you stay safe. If you don't destroy your body in the first year or two. And then the third and final thing, and again, not in necessarily any particular order, the third thing is I'm protecting myself. I want to make sure that what I do is protective of myself, because I'm no good to anybody if I'm injured. I'm no good to anybody if I break my neck. So, between those three things, taking care of the audience, making sure they get what they need, taking care of my partner, taking care of myself, my partner taking care of me. I mean, it's that, it's that dance between two people in a ring, and it should be very protective. So if I throw you and I don't measure my throw in a way in which I help you land in the most safest of way, if I just launch you, I just consider that to be not very respectful of my partner.
You always want to make sure you're protecting your partner as well as yourself at all times. You want to make sure the moves are done and execute them as 100% safe, so nobody gets injured, nobody gets hurt, and you want to entertain the fans. In general,
and again, you can take these things and twist and turn them any which way, but it's intensity. The guys that I have experienced in this business, that I have witnessed at the top of their game, what do they all have? And it's that intensity. It's that looking like they want to tear your head off. It's going through things like they mean it, doing things like they mean it, not just going through the paces. You can go, they talk about chain wrestling nowadays, going through flows and doing all that stuff. Well, that's fine and dandy. But there's a point where some people do it so smooth that it becomes a dance that looks too choreographed. I don't like that. Preference, it's my preference. It's not. What I say isn't gospel. I'm not. My stuff isn't right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just my stuff. I don't like it. It's a preference thing. So I would. Does it look wonderful? If you're doing a lot of things that I see in the sort of lucha libre style, but kind of different than that, then yeah, it's miraculous. It's miraculously entertaining at some level. It's amazingly athletic. It's almost watching gymnasts. So you can't take away from what it takes to do that, but it's just too smooth for me. I want it to be a battle out there. I want it to appear as a battle out there, which means you're intense, and it's intensity from both sides of the ring.
There's always that suspense of disbelief that you want to have. Like, you want to make sure like this person has a realistic chance of winning.
Yep.
And I think that's important to keep in mind too, because you want to know why somebody is doing a certain maneuver, why this person is angry at this person, for what reason. It's the story and the believability that sells a match.
Yep, and you can still create that believability even in the light of these days, where we talk about marks, smart marks. I hate all these words, but they're out there. We can still create that believability. And I have this discussion in seminars, which is, do you ever, you're walking along the street and you see some guy and he slips and he falls. And when you watch it, when you experience it, what do you feel? It's that thing in your gut where you go, oh,
pain.
It's that instant reaction that you have that's a very guttural type reaction. Well, you can create that in the ring. And I tell the story all the time. And I have to stop saying that I tell the story all the time, but I do on my seminar stuff, because people look at you and they'll go, well, everybody knows now. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people know. It's what you can tell them, even against their knowledge, that makes them kind of take a step back. And so my example, and it just really hit me a couple months ago because I had forgotten all about it. I'm in the ring and I had a match against Randy Savage Macho. And I had a match against him, and I go to do something. He ends up reversing. He throws me into the corner. I reverse it. I throw him into the corner. I charge him. He puts his knee up last minute. I take it and I splatter, because I never would throw a guy into the corner and just kind of sit and wait. I would follow up. Terry Gordy was great at doing this. Terry Gordy would take you into the corner, and as he's taking you into the corner and you hit it, he's right behind you, and he's either clotheslining you or giving you an elbow or taking you right out of the corner and doing his thing with you, not giving you any space, which is what you do in a fight, right? In a real fight, you're not giving people space. You're not backing up away from them. You're not standing there waiting for shit to happen. If you do, you're not a really good fighter. So Randy and I were in there. He goes to throw me in. I throw him in. I charge him. He puts his knee up. I take the knee and I splatter. Sort of like the Japanese style of taking a bump, where it's it's super quick. You hit the mat and it's a big noise. I get back to the dressing room and my dad looks at me. Now, this isn't just my dad. This is my dad, the great Malenko. My dad, the great Malenko, who's trained so many guys in this business. I mean, who had an effect on so many guys in this business, from Terry Funk to Bruno Sammartino. I mean, if you knew how many people were affected by my dad, you would sit and just kind of shake your head. And so, if you know who my dad is and what he's done in this business, for a split second, he thought that I hurt myself. And I looked at him, I went, Dad, I'm fine. Okay. I created, and it wasn't me, it was the moment and the way that we did things that just for a split second created believability even to the great Malenko. If you can do that to a guy who's been in the business all his life, who knows it upside down, inside out, every which way, you tell me you can't do that with somebody on the front row. Some old lady from Peoria who's sitting there and who's pissed off at her kids and wants to see somebody get hurt, and you give that and you deliver it to her, and she jumps up and she's all in herself. You tell me you can't do that in the right moment, with the right kind of action in the ring, with the right purpose and the right intensity. We can do it. Most people just choose not to, because it's too hard sometimes to do things right.
What would you say was the worst bump that you ever took?
Probably the worst bump I ever took was when I let somebody do something to me that I didn't feel comfortable doing, which was Doug Furness and Phil LaFon, Danny Crawford, Can-Am Express. They pick me up. I got on somebody's shoulder, and I forget exactly how somebody was coming off the top rope. But, when they told me they wanted to do that, I thought, I don't know about that. And then, I found out I shouldn't have done that. I should have said, nope, not today. It is a dance between two people or between tag teams in a match. And it's a dance that everybody's responsible for their piece for. Fred Astaire would have looked like crap if Ginger Rogers couldn't have danced. Ginger Rogers would have looked like crap if Fred Astaire couldn't have danced. And Ginger Rogers was a better dancer because she had to do everything backwards, right? That's what they say. So, it takes everybody doing their piece. The Steamboat Flair classics. Why were they classics? Were they classics because Rick was doing things? No. Were they classics because Steamboat was doing things? No. It took two of them. It took Rick doing his thing and Steamboat selling like he was selling something on the roadside. He was great at showing the challenge and the beating and how he was pulling his reserves out of his rear end to get back up and fight the fight again. And people could feel it because when people used to go to the matches in the old days, however many decades ago, and I think still today, really, because it's a psychological thing. People go with baggage. We go into life with baggage, right? You're at the grocery store and you get in front of somebody and they yell at you. Well, maybe they're yelling at you, but maybe they're not yelling at you. Maybe they're yelling at you in part, but they're also yelling at their boss who just told them that they weren't any good. Or they're yelling at their husband or their wife who just said, I'm really not happy. And or they're yelling at the kids who won't listen. So I just happen to be, it's transference, right? They're taking all that and they're putting it where they want to put it, which is on my back in the middle of a shopping plaza or a store. And it's the same thing in the wrestling ring. It used to be even more so. I used to witness people, octogenarians, people at the end of their lives who look like they could barely maneuver down the aisle to get to their seat. And then you look at them and they're on the top of their seat. They're standing on their seat, yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs like sailors, little old grandmas screaming like sailors. Why are they doing that? Are they doing that because they're that pissed off at the people in the ring? No, they hate their life. Maybe it's not that bad, but they hate other things. There's other things going on in their lives that they have no control over. So they get to go to the wrestling match and they transfer all that into the guys in the ring and they let it all out. I used to tell people all the time, if you want to experience fans like you've never seen before, and maybe that's a stretch, but pretty close, especially years gone by, go to the wrestling matches. I had buddies who didn't like wrestling, and I would tell them, go to the matches with me, come to the matches with me. And they would leave going, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Those people are crazy. Well, they're crazy because they can be crazy because there's sort of no holds barred when you're a wrestling fan. And sometimes dangerously to the point of, they're carrying a knife or they're carrying a knitting needle. My dad got stabbed multiple times. Other people have been stabbed. Ole Anderson was split across his entire chest by some old guy with a knife. So
crazy.
That's what it used to be, but that's what people still are. I mean, we all have our baggage. We all have our crap that we have to deal with, and we want escapism, and that escapism can be professional wrestling, and we can really do a better job with it if we just slow it down, do the typical old timer thing, slow it down. Less is more or less, and give solid. Let's be solid. Let's be intense. And if you want to throw something in there that's a little bit more, we say flippity floppity or off the top rope kind of stuff, knock yourself out. But if you do it all the time, it's a lot of risk. It's just a lot of risk.
Find places to put it in. Have a
that's everything. I mean, that's life, right? If you're blowing everything you have every single minute of every single day, you're going to be burned out. Well, if you do that every day in your life, you'll be burned out in a couple of days.
Well, when you got started in the business, it's very intimidating when you're stepping in the ring for the first time. Any pointers that your dad or trainers gave you that still you apply to them today, even after your time in the ring?
Well, the ultimate piece of all that is be well trained. You're going to be less prone to be in your head and to be all vertucht, they say in Yiddish. All oh my gosh, I know, what do I do? What do I do? You're going to be less prone to do that if you're well trained, which means that you spend time on a mat, you spend time in a ring, you go through things, you practice, you have, there's nothing better to be prepared for being in a ring than spending some time in a ring. And that's part of the problem that you see with a lot of the independents. And it's not that every independent guy out there, and there's so many independent promotions, but it's not that everybody sucks. It's just they don't get a lot of ring time. And again, it used to be, and I'm going to keep saying the used to's every single day of my life, probably till I drop dead. But it used to be that, it was 360 days a year. You're on the road. You can't help but either step your game up and be great, or be the shits and not get booked anywhere. But, with the independents, maybe you're working a couple times a month. You can't, show me anything. Tell a neurosurgeon that, hey, every 2 times a year we're going to let you do neurosurgery, and see how great that neurosurgeon is going to be.
You always want to make sure you find time to put the reps in, put the work in, and you become such an accomplished wrestler. Once you have your first match and have a few matches under your belt, get those nerves out, you start developing that confidence. Do you remember the first time you felt very confident after you finished a match?
The very first time I walked into the ring. I mean, and I'm not saying I was good, but I felt confident in what I was doing. I can't recollect ever getting into the ring being jittery. I mean, the excitement, your adrenaline's going, but really being jittery, really being nervous because I'm doubting myself, or I'm questioning, can I do this? Can I do? No, I wasn't. It's not because not because I had a big head or a, significantly huge ego. It was just because I knew I was comfortable in my skin. And so I don't remember ever getting in a match and going, oh my gosh, look who's across the ring from me. What am I going to do? Can I make this happen? Can I do this? And maybe other guys have done that. It goes back to, I was part of the business from the time I was born. I was born into a business. I experienced it. I witnessed it. I was in the ring, even though I wasn't in the ring, because my dad was in the ring. So I traveled the country. I watched him in matches. I watched everybody in matches. My dad wrestled everybody and anybody, from, Buddy Rogers and I just found out they set an attendance record in Jacksonville between my dad and Buddy Rogers, the true nature boy. I'm finding out stuff that I didn't even know about my dad because we're doing a book.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, let's talk about that. At what point did you decide to put together this kind of a cool idea to write a book?
Well, first of all, it's not necessarily a cool idea. It's just something that a lot of the guys.
This episode is brought to you by Workday. Guessing is for game shows, not your business, especially when your margin for error is 0. Workday is the enterprise AI platform for HR, finance, and IT, with a deep understanding of your organization's context and guardrails. So every AI action is permission aware, giving you accuracy 24/7 and the ability to not just get work done, but get it done right. It's a new Workday.
Do or attempt to do, and the reason for it is because if you've been in the business for a while, and especially if you're a second, third generation kind of guy, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of stories. I think first and foremost, the interest to me is to have something memorialized so that I can give it to my daughters and I can hand it off to people that I love and say, hey, when I'm gone, here's something for you to look at and remember. Here's something for you to look at and remember Grandpa, my dad, great grandpa in the case of my grandsons. So that's the reason for doing it. Now, if they sell, if it turns out to be good and we sell it to you and there's any money to be made, that's gravy. But I'm doing it because I wanted to. At some point in time, my mom, like everybody, we're just not going to remember a lot of stuff. or not as much as we do today. And what I'm finding out too is there's a lot of stuff that I didn't even know. You know, the author to this is a guy by the name of Jonathan Snowden. Jonathan did Bret Hart's book, and he did Ken Shamrock's book. He's a very proficient writer, one of the best out there. And so he took the project on. So he's, in his research, he's been sharing things with me, and I'm looking at these things going, holy crap, I didn't know that. At least my own father and I didn't know that.
It's very fascinating to be able to document such amazing history of the legends and finding like these cool pictures and artifacts and things that you wouldn't expect to find. And you're able to document these into a memoir. That's exciting. It really is.
And it's it's one thing for somebody outside the inner sanctum to look at something and go, oh, I've never seen that before. It's another thing for my dad's son or sons to be looking at things going, holy crap, we've never seen that picture. We didn't know our dad did this. And it's the typical thing for all families where when you're growing up in a household, you've got you got your dad, you got your grandfathers, you got your moms and grandmothers. We don't as kids think through what we should do, which is have really good discussions with our loved ones. I never sat with my dad and talked about a lot of different things. We talked about a lot of things, but we didn't talk about a lot of other things. I never sat with my grandfather. My grandfather came over before the war. He was a Jew from Poland. He came over before the war. His brother went down to Argentina. They never saw each other again for the rest of their lives. I never had a discussion with him about where he came from. I never had a discussion with him about what he faced, the trials and tribulations that he had to, that he encountered, and that he had to, work his way through to come into the States as somebody who had, his infamous pot to piss. He didn't have a pot to piss in a window to throw it out of, right? And yet he built the tailor business. And Grandpa, how'd you do that? What did you do? I never asked him that stuff. I just kind of stood around, and I loved them. I mean, I thought the world of my grandparents, but I didn't have those discussions. What a shame that we don't do that. I mean, if this podcast reaches one person who goes, I need to go talk to my grandpa and grandma and ask them about their lives beforehand, then this will be a worthwhile podcast.
Exactly. Now, you've had the opportunity to wrestle in so many different countries, so many different promotions. You have spent a lot of time working in Japan. What was that experience like for you? Anything you noticed culturally that was different from the U.S., and things that you picked up there that you really enjoyed about your time in Japan?
Let me see the cultural differences in Japan. The country, the people, the food, the way they talk. I mean, pretty much everything. It's a very culturally different world in Japan because it's Japan. In fact, one thing that happened over there was a guy who was kind of beating up on a guy that I had partly trained, who was beating up some of the younger kids. And I went to him and I said, hey, I never did that with you. That's kind of rough that you're doing it with these kids. And he looked at me and goes, you're not from here. So, you're not Japanese. So you need to, in a kind way, but sternly, he pretty much told me to mind my own business because I wasn't Japanese. I was a gaijin, and I didn't have any place telling him what he should be doing in Japan. And that marked a moment for me where I realized that I'm in a different country. They have different ways of doing things. But in the same breath, what an honorable, especially the Japan I knew when I first started going, an amazingly respectful and honorable culture and people. I loved it. It was a second home to me. I was there a lot. And they paid well. And they paid every dollar they said they were going to pay you. Nobody ever stiffed you for a single yen. So why did I go back and forth to Japan? It's because the entire experience was better than I would have ever had here in the States. And they were just great. And I got to deal with a lot of the people who were the top-notch folks here in the States who were over in Japan too. So I wasn't missing anything. It's not like, boy, if I'd come to the States, I could have worked with this guy or I could have worked with that guy. No, they were all over there. They all came over there at some point. I had opportunities. Now, were there guys that I never worked with? Of course. There were tons of guys I never worked with. They were never going to put me with Hogan, or there were some guys that I didn't think they'd ever put me with, and they did. I never thought I'd be against Stan, and I ended up working against him a couple times, maybe more than a couple times. I never thought I'd be there against Doc, Steve Williams, and Terry Gordy, and we worked against them. So it was an amazing place. It was a place where you could feel comfortable. I could drop my wallet in the middle of the street, and get back to my hotel, and the wallet would be there. And not only would the wallet be there, but every single dollar or yen that was in that wallet that I dropped it with would still be in the wallet. And if anything, they might have arranged it so that it was in numerical order.
And the thing is the fans are very respectful, as you mentioned a bit ago. The people are respectful. The fans are respectful as well when you go to the shows.
Appreciative. It's more than respect. It's appreciative. They really appreciate you. They are. I mean, the respect is one thing, but the appreciation. I mean, they respect you as a person and what you do, but they appreciate the work that you put in and the time and effort it takes for you to get where you've gotten. And that's right up there with the respect piece. It goes hand in hand.
Now, you had made some appearances in WCW and ECW. What was it like getting the chance to work on such a worldwide national stage?
I never viewed it as any different than working a match. I mean, for me, and I don't, maybe it comes across weird, but it was about working the guys. It was about who I was going to be in the ring with and whether or not we were going to have a good match. And I frankly didn't give a crap whether or not, if that was on national TV. Or I was telling somebody the other day, one of the best matches I had that I kind of forgot about was down in the Bahamas. Small venue, kind of dirty and dingy and dark as hell and kind of skanky. And, that one match kind of clicked. I would put that against any match I ever had on the national stage. It was that was the driving force, not whether or not there was TV lights on or I knew there was a bigger audience beyond the building. Didn't matter.
Seems like some of the best matches I feel like don't happen on camera. They happen off camera. Would you?
Well,
agree?
I don't think it's either. I don't think it's either or. I think they just happen. If they're going to happen, they happen. If you have the right people in the match and they click in the process of delivering a match, then it just happens. I mean, one of the best venues in all of Japan, one of the best venues in the world is Corkin Hall. That place is. You walk into Corkin Hall and you think, oh my gosh, this is supposed to be. Oh wait a minute, it's kind of a little place. I don't know how many people it fits. Maybe a couple thousand, maybe. But boy, oh boy, that place is magical. You don't walk into that place without feeling the ghosts of Christmas past.
Would you say? I guess that's like the equivalent of Madison Square Garden. That's like
or like in Tampa, the Armory, the Fort Homer Hesterly Armory we always talk about Fort Homer Hesterly Armory. It was a Madison Square Garden of the South. Definitely not in size and configuration. It was much smaller venue, and it was not anywhere near as nice. It was a kind of a rundown old place. It was a National Guard armory, and yet true magic happened in that place.
You've had the pleasure of working with so many people throughout your career. Who would you say have been some of your favorite opponents that you've gotten to be in the ring with over the years?
I mean, I think, if I had to say anybody, it would be Dynamite Kid first and foremost. And just because there was a lot of reasons for that. So without going into detail, there were just a lot of reasons where when I'm standing in the ring and I was looking across the ring and Dynamite's standing there, I'm going, that's Dynamite Kid. Now, back to what I said before, was I fearful? Was I scared I couldn't keep up with him? Was I this? No, I was excited about being in the ring with Dynamite. I wasn't so excited that I was worried about the match. But, I'm looking across the ring going, that's Dynamite Kid. And he had he was already on the downside of his career, but he had a phenomenal reputation. I knew who he was. I knew he was going to bust his ass out there, and he did. So he was one. Ricky, Steamboat was another. I mean, Macho, Randy. My dad, I had a match against my dad in the Knoxville territory. That was maybe one of those. I hate the word surreal. I used to like it because it was something that nobody said, and now everybody says surreal. Everything's surreal. Surreal is surreal.
Now I want to switch gears and
no switching gears. Don't grind them. You can switch them, just don't grind them.
You've had the opportunity to get involved in so many different charity fundraisers, just outreach over the years. What kinds of things have you been able to do to help make a difference in your community?
I think the biggest things that I've been involved in the past is oncology, cancer care. I'm a pharmacist first and foremost, and I kind of put my flag in the oncology space years ago, and helped bring along an organization that became the Organization for Pharmacy in Cancer Care. It's called HOPA, Hematology Oncology Pharmacy Association. And then I kind of dug into the world of senior adult cancer care, geriatric oncology, with a gentleman who was the number one guy in the world in treating seniors with cancer, 65 and above. That was the nonprofit effort that we embarked on. We did some work that still needs to be done, but we did a little bit. And then some odds and ends here and there I've tried to help out. I'm involved now. I really haven't dug in yet. I'm attempting to see how I can be of service, but there's a Tampa organization. It's called Beat the Streets. So it's getting kids to wrestle and helping them understand the importance of wrestling, teaching them wrestling, getting them to understand how important wrestling is in bringing you forth in your life and developing certain characteristics and traits and great things that you can play in other areas of your life. Wrestling isn't just wrestling. Wrestling is who you are. Wrestling is about being a good person, being respectful, being diligent, being on time. All those things that will bode well when you cross over from being on the mat to being in the workplace, or being in a relationship with somebody you love, or being there for your kids. I mean, there's certain traits and characteristics that you want across every piece of your life, and wrestling delivers that if you let it. And so Beat the Streets is not just about taking kids through the experience of wrestling, but also taking kids through things that will bode well and setting them up for at least a modicum of success as they get older.
I love to hear that. It definitely helped build up confidence and discipline and respect for your elders, respect for your coworkers and teachers. And it's great to be able to have a vehicle, an outlet where kids can be able to get equipped with these tools.
Well, wrestling in and of itself is an individual sport. And why did I like that? Because you win or you lose. And the finger pointing is really tough when you're on a mat by yourself against one opponent. How do you point fingers? And we live in a finger pointing world, right? We live in this, it's not my fault. It's because I don't have an opportunity, because somebody doesn't do this for me, because somebody doesn't do that for me. People don't take responsibility for their own actions. People think that somebody just should hand them things. Wrestlers don't think that. That you climb on that mat, your coach ain't out there with you. I went to a Jesuit high school, so I learned proper English. Your coach isn't out there with you. He may be on the sideline yelling and screaming, but that isn't going to do you a bit of good when you're on that mat, or at least in my eyes. So you're there on your own. If you lose, you lost. If you win, you win. And it teaches you a valuable lesson, again, that translates on over into the rest of your life. You're responsible for you. How you act, your composure, how you deal with people, it's all you. You want to point to somebody else, then you're an idiot. Because it's you.
There's life lessons that you build, those like building blocks, and they help guide you to how you can become a successful adult.
Yep. I mean, if you're on a football team, you can say, well, that defensive guy didn't block, or that running back didn't, whatever. You can blame. You can't. Who do you blame on a mat? You can turn around and blame some imaginary guy, I guess, if you're not real into.
Would you say teaching wrestling is one of your biggest passions?
Oh, I love it. And I love the legit side of that. I mean, I do. I go back to my time with Carl Gotch and doing submission wrestling. They say catch is catch can wrestling. I just left Wigan, which is it's not really the birthplace, because catch wrestling was really here in the States before it made its way to England. And then England and Wigan in particular became known as the birthplace because it was kind of revised and revived and revitalized over there. And then they trained a couple people, in particular Carl Gotch, Billy Robinson, who came back to the States. You had Lou Thez over here. These guys then went on over to to Japan and really plied their trade in Japan, and Japan really was where mixed martial arts started cutting its teeth because you had the original shoot organizations there, and then you had Pancrase, then you had Pride, and it just eventually filtered on over here into the States with the UFC. A lot of those guys came over here; they became UFC Hall of Famers. More and more people now understand that Japan played a very significant role in the development of mixed martial arts, alongside of what happened down in Brazil and the Gracies and those that family.
Yeah, and to see it grow and continue to grow, it's fascinating to see how it played a part in that. And you were in Japan as a wrestler, so you've seen kind of how the country's grown and evolved. And now you're teaching a sport that has some history with Japanese culture.
Yeah, a long history. I mean, not to make light of the other martial arts that Japanese have significantly embraced. Between judo and sumo and so many other variations of the art forms that exist out there in the martial arts world.
Was there a particular charity or fundraiser that you were involved with that was just very near and dear to your heart?
Probably the geriatric oncology piece, mainly because, like all of us, we're all touched by cancer at some point, if not personally and individually. Our family members, and my mom passed away from cancer. My dad got different cancers. So, there's a lot of different types of solid tumors and hematologic malignancies. There's various blood disorders, but my mom and dad both passed away from cancer, and they were older adults. So that whole world of senior adult cancer care hit home dramatically, and so it gave me a chance to kind of dig in and help. And in the world of cancer care, it's kind of baby steps. So we took some baby steps and we made some changes.
Wow, it's just heartbreaking. It really is.
Just part of the human existence. So we've done a lot of that stuff in some essence, in some way, shape, or form to ourselves. Environmentally, we've damaged things and created situations that have changed our genetics. We can't escape. We can't escape things that happen to us because we've kind of messed with the environment.
What is it about giving back to the community that gives you the most joy?
I don't know if it's the giving back. It's it's the effect of things when you see things happen. When like with the geriatric oncology consortium, we worked. And then one day myself and a couple of the docs and some other people were sitting at the FDA in one of their major conference rooms with some of the key players at the FDA, and we're talking about how things need to change in dealing with the older adult with cancer, and those are the really rewarding moments. I mean, I was sitting there next to a very good friend of mine who's a medical oncologist, and we both looked at each other and went, "Huh, we're at the FDA." It only took us 5 years to get here, but we're here, and so we watched changes occur because of our work. Even if they were little changes, even if they were almost insignificant, little teeny tiny steps forward.
But you watched and you were witnessing something that could have helped, that could help benefit people that are going through such a just something very terrifying.
Yeah, it's scary to people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary, and it's difficult. And with all the information that's thrown at you when you're given that diagnosis, so you're in the middle of being scared to death. You're being told that you may not be around for as long as you thought you were going to be around, and now people are telling you a whole bunch of different things that you got to remember. That's why you always want a caregiver there with you. You want somebody there with you to listen a little bit closer because your mind is just spinning. It's a tough time for most folks.
Yeah.
Not to mention you feel like crap. My mom was not in the greatest of shape. So as her son, I was supposed to be, and I was, her advocate. I was there with her during her doctor's appointment. And I don't say that to go, look at me, how great I was, because, I'm her son. I'm supposed to be there. If I wasn't there, I'd be an asshole. So, somebody needed to be there to listen to the docs and to talk back and ask questions. And, and the patient at that point in time is just so dove into the scariness of their disease that it's hard for them to do that. So they need somebody to do that for them. And I was able to do that. I was able to do that for my mom. I was able to do that for my dad.
You were there in their time of need.
Yeah. But it's not, it's not something that you should do. It is something that you should do, but not in the way that, it's a nicety. If you don't do that, come on, these are your parents, or your kids, or your spouses. You need to step up for other people in your life and be there with them on their journey through cancer or any other debilitating or chronic illness or disease.
Exactly. Joe, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers. Thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. Where can people find out more about you? If you have anything you want to promote, feel free.
The only thing I always look to do, we're going to have the book coming out, so I do hope we move a few of the copies of the book. And I don't know exactly when. Probably around the end of the year. I would think that we should have something in print somewhere around the end of the year. And then, I always look to be out there teaching. So if there's if somebody has a school, if somebody has a promotion, and they want somebody to come in and kind of take everything back a step. I'm still looking to be out there being helpful to people if I can. And my whole role is to take people back to the basics and, teach the core principles of being a professional wrestler. Not being, I'm not the guy to teach them how to do the, 360 corkscrew, with a back tuck.
All right. Well, Joe, thanks again so much, and you're more than welcome to come back.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Absolutely. And remember, get your copy now of Wrestling with Heart Presents Champions for a Cause Volume 1, available as a paperback on Amazon.com. And for $15, all your favorite wrestlers are in there, talking about Buff Bagwell, Jake the Snake Roberts, Tito Santana, Mark Merrow, and so many others. Check it out while you can. I'm Stanley Carr, and I'll see you next time.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.
Hello?
Look what TJ Maxx dragged in.
The Devil Wears Prada 2 is now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
We are digital, we are downloadable, we are streamable.
The fashion event of the year is certified fresh.
Pull yourself together. We have work to do.
Critics say it's smart and witty and the perfect sequel.
That's all.
Get runway ready for The Devil Wears Prada 2 on Disney Plus and Hulu. Rated PG-13.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.